Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. As we know, we're covering Paradox Rift, and what better place to start by looking at Iron Valiant with Urshifu. It did the best part on it, and can you really donk your opponent as early as the first turn, even if your opponent hasn't played a single card? This is the idea of this deck, so let's break in to see how it's been performing in the rest of the world. So like I said, Japan has had it for about 2 and a bit weeks now, and it's about 2% of the meta. Not exactly groundbreaking, but doing pretty okay by being about 2 wins. Definitely different sort of versions of a deck is being piloted. We've seen some with Entei, we've seen some recently on online tournaments with Jolteon, but more importantly, we've seen a lot of them with Urshifu. Urshifu, I think, is very, very powerful because it gives that big, huge bench damage onto the bench. Pretty much using the Iron Valiant's Techno Bits ability to kind of switch into the active spot, do 2 damage counters to anywhere on the opponent's field, pretty much taking away the likes of that pesky Manaphy. You can use like of Yoga Loop to take an additional turn, and in theory, you can pretty much just try like win the game before your opponent's played a single card, which honestly, if you think about how many of evolution decks there are, this deck is in a very good position in the metagame. So, well, let's look into my list and my version of the archetype so far. So we play 4 copies of the Iron Valiant EX. It's that incredible sort of ability, pretty much whenever it's in the active spot, when you switch into it, put 2 damage counters on anywhere on your opponent's field. The idea of this sort of option is getting rid of those pesky, really easy basic Pokemon to KO. Frigibax, Gimmickle, Rolts, anything like that can be easy to be taken additional prize cards, even likes of Charmander and Manaphy. And how can we get additional more turns? Well, you can use Medicham V's Yoga Loop, which you put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If they are KO'd, take an additional turn after you take your prize card, which is honestly incredibly powerful. Pretty much the whole strategy of this deck is to try and donk your opponent, and we haven't seen a donk deck for so long. This deck is absolutely insane. The reason why I partnered with the likes of Urshifu VMAX, because Urshifu VMAX is very, very strong right now in the game, has very, very high HP, and can deal really good relevant weaknesses. Think about the likes of Miraidon. You can hit for weakness from there. Miraidon is one of these top archetype decks. Doing 120 damage to anywhere on the opponent's bench is very, very strong. Think about Lugia, you can do your Techno Bits, kind of like set up the likes of the Archeops, and then all of a sudden you can use Gmax Rapid Throw to take 2 prizes on both their Archeops and really leave the opponent stranded. The rest of the cards here are very, very simple. Squawkabilly really helps with the setup. Item cards, Super Rod to constantly reutilizing likes of your Iron Valiants and Urshifu if they fall down. Heavy Ball, because we don't really want to prize it. Our ideal board state, we want to have like between 2 and 4 Iron Valiants in play, constantly doing multiple damages all the time. It's very, very strong. And then we play a ton of switch cards. 2 switch, 4 switch cards, and 4 escape rope. Escape rope is very good for that disruptive capability. Switch card for that healing factor on the Medicham and Iron Valiant, and 2 switches because, well, we can't really use switch card to heal Urshifu, so it's always good to have that guarantee switching out to all of your Pokemon in play. Honestly, this is very, very powerful, very consistent to constantly be getting the turn 1 donking effect, or potentially just getting the consistency of drawing into the item cards, with having the likes of Trekking Shoes, playing a 4 of a foam, and the rest of the item cards we use for searching. 4 Nest, 4 Ultra, 4 Battle VIP Pass. You can see here we are very much going straight into the consistency. We're going to try and make sure we gain every single card that we might potentially need. Nest will guarantee scale Iron Valiant, Ultra will guarantees likes of Urshifu, and Battle VIP Pass because there's no like special effects like whenever a Pokemon gets onto the bench. So it's really good to kind of have that maximum sort of draw factor. The rest of the cards in this deck, we play 2 Iono for be that disruptive capability, 2 Melanie because Melanie is very strong because you can all of a sudden like out of nowhere power up a Urshifu VMAX, and as well as Medicham V because we play a couple water energies as well. I do think this is definitely a bit stronger than the likes of the Intelligent Urshifu deck, which definitely was dominating and won NEIC. So I think this is a really good contender, especially for the last couple months of rotation. And finish off the rest, we do play 4 copies of Battle VIP Pod Research, because this deck constantly wants to be drawing all the right cards. For Research plus Squawkabilly, if you're going second, is very, very strong. Town Store as our stadium card of choice, because we can use Future Booster Energy Capsule, which gives Iron Valiant free retreat and additional 20 more damage, but we're not attacking with Iron Valiant. Just giving that additional pivot, giving that free retreat, and potentially not wasting one of your switch cards is very, very valuable to your resources. You want to use your switching cards, especially when you need it. So kind of like having that extra sort of switching out and having that giving it free retreat is really, really strong. And Forest of Steel Stone to kind of get any card we might want to have. You could add that to Medicham V to get the Rapid Strike Energy, to get the Yoga Loop, or potentially the Melanie, or potentially the Iono. And then we play 4 Rapid Strike Energy and 3 Water. Now you may look at this and go, Charlie, why on earth are you not playing Boss's Orders? Well, the idea of a set, because we're not the only thing maximum doing to the active spot is 120 damage with Gale Thrust. We're mainly be damaging the bench, so we don't really care where any of the Pokemon are. You do get the easy KOs on the likes of Miraidon, you do get the easy KOs on the likes of some Gardevoir, stuff like that, but you're not really going to be having the Urshifus out as much as possible. You want to be taking as many prizes as possible. In theory, if you're going second, you can you get a Yoga Loop out turn 1, and then if you follow up with a G-Max Rile Blow, you can in theory take like 3 to 4 prize cards before your opponent's taking a single one, which is honestly incredibly powerful, and this is why this deck is so strong with donking capability. So let's look at the matchup wise. My favorite ones are definitely the ones with the very slow, low HP basics. We'll be using those Techno Bites pretty much pretty much getting those easy KOs and potentially teaming up with Yoga Loops, try and get additional prize cards that way. Xian Pao has very low HP and can easily be KO'd with the likes of finishing up with the likes of Medicham or potentially Urshifu. Charizard as well does have a high HP, but a very weak Pokemon on the bench. So if we're just focusing on the ones on the bench, as we saw a couple of days ago when I mentioned in the Elite Four battle for Japan, you saw that they had the likes of Toedscruel and Bibarel, so you can easily get those KOs that way very, very easily. Same thing with Golden Go and Lost Box. Lost Box, they do pack a punch. You have huge amount of HP. You're not really playing these big psychic Pokemon to get these big one-hit KOs. And Golden Go has very, very low HP Gimmickle. The best one's got 50 HP, and you could potentially just do one Techno Bite plus an additional Yoga Loop, and then you also get a prize card and an extra turn, which is very strong. Rest of the even side, likes of Lugia, Giratina, Gardevoir, and Miraidon, I've done a little bit of testing. I've looked online a tiny bit, and I would say these are about the most even one. Miraidon, like to get the big one-hit KO, they have to sacrifice the likes of a not Iron Hands, the likes of a Raichu or an Iron Hands on a Squawkabilly. So wasting a ton of resources, so you can easily kind of respond to them KOing the likes of Urshifu to keep them in check. Gardevoir as well, because you can get the likes of the KO and Rolts and Curliers and potentially take additional turns, and having the likes of pretty much they would have to have a Manaphy down and a Jirachi to really like slow down your board state, and you can easily get those KOs in theory with the likes of Techno Bites. So Gardevoir sacrificing so many resources just to stay in the game, you can definitely become a bit more even. Same thing with Giratina and Lugia. I would say these are definitely a little bit more even sort of thing. Lugia has a ton of resources to try and get a big KO on the likes of Urshifu, even sometimes the likes of Iron Valiant. Same thing with Giratina as well. They can get the easy KOs, but you can really punish them their bench Pokemon, take additional turns, because a lot of Giratinas aren't really playing Manaphy anymore, but be wary, they do play the likes of a counter catcher. But definitely, I think the unstable ones are the likes of Roaring Moon and Mew EX. Need I say more? These are decks which are the very, very big, powerful cards which can get easy one-hit KOs as early as they could go first. Sorry, if they go second. Roaring Moon has a ton of HP. Yes, they do potentially do huge amount of damage to themselves, and in theory, you could take additional turns that sort of way. So that's something you've got to be considerate about. And Mew EX, well, you only have to be attacking with the likes of Urshifu and Medicham. And I feel like that's a little bit more of a write-off. You can like potentially stall them, but they play a ton of draws factor. They can have Path to Peak to really slow you down. So in my testing and theorizing, I believe these are the most unfavorable ones. But if you disagree with any of these decisions, please let me know in the comments and let's talk about it. So looking ahead of this deck, I do think this can keep Evo decks in check. A lot of people thought it could be Sableye. Potentially Iron Valiant with Urshifu can be that new like deck checker sort of thing, like not gatekeeper sort of thing, because you can still play multiple subversions. I know a lot of decks are going with the evolution TM and going more of the like Charmeleons and stuff like that to try and like protect them from the devolution TM, which could be another inclusion in this deck. Is Urshifu the best partner for Iron Valiant? Potentially, yes. From what we've seen online in Japan, this is definitely the more theoried one. This is definitely the one which a lot of people are playing with the archetype. But there are definitely other ones as well, like Jolteon to additional more damage if there's any damage counters on the opponent's side. We also have the likes of his Entei doing huge amount of damage and potentially these big one-hit KOs by switching into your Iron Valiant and then going into an Entei in the last second to get these big one-hit KOs at the end. And could this be a strong deck in the meta? Could it really be an inclusion for your testing things for LAIC? For me, I'm not going to LAIC, but this is definitely a deck which I've sleeved up and kind of got ready to test around it. Kind of like the last hurrah for Urshifu VMAX. It's definitely had a huge ton of love, especially constantly throughout the format. Obviously, of Italian Urshifu doing really well, and potentially Iron Valiant Urshifu VMAX could really be the next sort of saving sort of deck. Having the donking capability, we haven't seen this in the Pokemon TCG in like years. So last time I had the huge donking deck, Pokemon Interactive with a ban. I don't think this is a banning sort of deck at all. But honestly, I do think this deck is very, very strong and very well placed in the metagame. If people are still playing evolution decks and they're still around, even though people were worried about Iron Hands, and Iron Hands hasn't had the impact that people may have thought it has. We're not in the official tournaments. We've just seen like tournaments over in Japan, the City Leagues, online tournaments, as well as also the big tournament happening in Japan with the Elite Four. Once we get into the LAIC and the big sort of tournaments come around there, we can really understand how the meta is going to evolve, and is this going to be a really good contender to kind of keep in check in the rest of the meta game. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to enter into my giveaway. It closes in just a couple of days time, so link is in the description to enter into that. And thank you so much for all the people who have already. It truly does mean so much to me. So I will see you guys in a couple of days for another video. Bye for now.